Bloomberg senior editor Chris Anstey, who works right here in our Bloomberg bureau, had the chance to speak with a pair of experts at accounting firm KPMG. A senior economist, Ken Kim, and John Capone, who is the managing partner at KPMG's Boston hub, sat down with Chris to talk about the state of the economy as well as the impact of the so-called millionaire's tax.
The conversations that I've had over the past 2 days with local leaders is that they're having an awfully hard time in terms of finding talent and filling open vacancies. It's been very difficult, especially during COVID. And now even as we kind of get out of COVID, it's still a similar situation. The labor market in the Boston area is incredibly tight. In terms of the national unemployment rate, we're currently at 3.7%. But for the Boston metro area, the unemployment rate is 2.9%. And in fact, one business leader told me that for their companies, the unemployment rate is effectively zero. So it is very difficult to fill those vacancies. And going forward, population growth in the United States is barely growing at all. In 2021, our population grew at 0.1%. So we basically went from 330 million to 333 million, which is hardly any growth at all. And because household family sizes are smaller, that's actually our future workforce for the U.S. economy. So this is something that companies will have to continue to grapple with in the coming decades.
But if you talk about labor shortages and low unemployment, there are all of these recession forecasts out there for the national economy. When I think of recession, I think of rising unemployment, of layoffs, and that kind of thing. So the picture you're drawing for this region doesn't sound super recessionary.
That's entirely right. So over the last 20 years, labor market conditions in the Boston regional area have been running tighter than national conditions, meaning that if we do go into a recession nationally, the hope is that if similar trends play out as it has over the last 20 years, Boston's economy won't contract as much and labor market conditions will rebound much quicker than nationally.
And just to be clear, you do see a recession coming.
Yes, we do anticipate a national recession. We are looking for a negative GDP in both Q1 and Q2 of 2023. And that's because the Fed, even though they have raised rates yesterday, 0.5% to 4.5%, on the federal funds rate target, they're not done yet. We look for additional rate hikes into the new year.
And you were saying about a percentage point more.
That's correct. We're looking for the terminal funds rate of 5.5%. The risk is that inflation kind of stalls out in terms of the improvement, and the risk is that the Fed will have to continue to raise rates perhaps into the summer.
So we get a recession and we get sustained inflation that's not what we would like to see.
Correct. Because of the scarcity of labor issue, companies are, when they can secure talent, are paying higher wage rates. For example, ADP, automatic data processing, they are the payroll processor of choice for many companies, small, medium, large. And according to their data, it's real-time data as of November 2022. If you're a job stayer, the employee is winning an annual wage increase of 7.6%. If you're a job switcher, you're earning a wage increase of 15.1%. Wow. But certainly that can't continue. That's not sustainable. And that's why the Fed is raising rates to weaken demand, get unemployment rate a little bit up higher. We're looking for 5.5% unemployment rate next year to weaken labor market conditions in order to get inflation lower.
Turning to you, John, one economic issue that has been prominent here is, of course, the tax change that was just put into place by the ballot initiative, the 4% surtax on millionaires. It was said before that with the estate tax being so high here that you didn't want to die in Massachusetts. So the question is it a case where you don't want to live in Massachusetts?
You certainly don't want to die here, that's for sure. I think when the Fair Share Amendment passed, I think there's a couple of things at play. One, you listening to Ken talk about the resilience of this economy. And you think about the businesses here, life sciences, healthcare, financial services, industrial manufacturing, lots of skilled talent right? We have world-leading universities here, right? How do we keep that talent here? As that ballot initiative went underway, I think we knew what was going to happen. You only had to look at New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, or California to see that when state taxes get high, people vote with their feet. They move. And Massachusetts, unfortunately, has also seen an outflow of people over the last 5 or so years. Any study will show that. And that's a critical element to it, right? The other piece that I would worry about as a business leader, as a CEO, is how do we attract that talent here? When you think about the great work that's being done in and around the city. I mean, just think about Moderna. Think about innovation. And when you think about that and the talent that that takes, and you want to continue to spur that, when you have a very high tax rate, and after this ballot initiative was passed, there was a think tank in Washington that ranked Massachusetts taxes for attractiveness of business. I think we went from around 30 to below 45. And that's the element that I worry about most, which is how are we attracting that talent? How are we attracting investment here in Massachusetts? And that's one of the things I think we'll have to be very mindful of going forward.
And is there any hope going forward? I mean, it passed.
Yeah.
It's kind of done.
And I think business leaders like myself, others, there are lots of groups that are coming together to think about what options might be to make this a more attractive economy, a more attractive tax base for businesses to grow here, to thrive here, and to attract here. And I suspect that, over the next, 30, 40, 50, 60 days, there'll be a number of studies done, of insights put forward, whether it's through, for example, Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, Mass Business Roundtable, or others, that I'm certain that the new administration would want to hear from.
Well, it's certainly something we're going to be keeping our eye on. Thank you very much for joining us.